questions about the things. Also, Mike works right now for Sony PlayStation, so without have any complaints about how the store looks and all the scrappy games that you can see, like millions of like $2.99 games that like no one will ever play or buy. That's not his part.
No, it's not my part of the company. No.
Yeah, but he's trying to do something about it. Anyway, without further ado, Mike Driver.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, thanks for all coming and sitting, and and hopefully this won't be too dull or anything. As Demir said, I've written a book, came out in 2024, called From Cardinal to Tabletops, which is what this whole talk is kind of based on. So you can see it's available. It will be available from the museum going forward. I wrote it, but it's not just a me thing. It comes from a company called Numbskull, a guy called Chris Hill. Really worked hard. He project managed it. Most of the games you see are his own collection, photographed exclusively for it. Some of them are mine as well, mixed in. So yeah, you can buy it online, but you can also, fingers crossed, buy it from here. And the reason we kind of started making it, or wanted to make it, is because there wasn't a book like it before. There's no real documentation of these kind of things. We couldn't include every game, but we included as many as we could. I think we got to nearly 60. From my point of view, it's a very underrepresented part of game history. You know, you get a lot of famous names in there, but they're not what you think of when you think of Pac-Man, or you think of Frogger, you think of Zaxxon. You don't think of these games, but you know, they are very cool, distinct things in and of themselves. They've really grown in collector appeal. You know, rewind 10 years and these were not that expensive, and now they're incredibly expensive to acquire. That's another thing that COVID and the lockdowns, I think, helped us out with. These things jumped up in price. And I think this gives us, as was implied in the introduction there, a different perspective of what home gaming was. You know, you kind of had the arcade, but you couldn't get the arcade at home. Because Arcade Perfect in the 1980s, as most people here will remember, meant going to an arcade, right? You had to go and play it at the arcade. Anything that was sold to us, I mean, I grew up in the UK, obviously, so I had a Spectrum, I had Amiga, I had a Master System. You didn't get the arcade experience on those machines. You know, my friends who had a 2600 or a VCS, you know, the games on those were not like the arcade. You'd sometimes get things on the back saying they were Arcade Perfect, but, you know, nonsense. Of course it wasn't. So we got Arcade Imperfect games when we were growing up, right? Because of hardware limitations, obviously everything had the same controllers. It wasn't like the real thing. Nothing felt bespoke, nothing felt really special. I mean, Pac-Man was and remains the biggest selling 2600 game of all time, but it's rubbish, right? It's pretty much established as a bad version, you know. Made by one guy in 6 months, sold a shed load, made a load of money for everyone involved, but not a good game at all. So just for a bit of fun, before we get into the tabletops and continue this thought about arcade imperfection, some other VCS games or 2600 games that came out based on arcades. I wonder who here can name any of these. And it's just for fun, it's not a competition, there's no prize. So does anyone want to try and name top left before we go on? Anyone recognize this game? River Raid. No. Yeah, it's not River Raid, but yeah. But bearing in mind that, you know, I'll show the answers at the end. I won't give. 940. Top right.
1-1.
No.
Some of them are going to be easier than others. Bottom left. Should be quite easy. And then bottom right. See, when I did this talk before, it was to a slightly younger audience, so they wouldn't get so. So Defender. Right. So you can see it's not too far away, right? No. Jump Junior, not quite so good. it's ballpark, right? This is one of my favorites. So when I did this talk before, this next game, people thought that it was a sports game. They thought they were running. It's not. It's Double Dragon. So Double Dragon on the 2600 there, not doing very well. And then 5 points for Vaxxon. Yeah, Vaxxon, of course, a world away from what we had in the arcades. Interesting, we'll get into it later. The Sega tabletop game of Zaxxon is probably more arcade accurate than the Atari one, which we'll get into. So yeah, these dedicated electronic games, they all come with their own limitations, but that's a good thing. You know, they're built to their own specs, they're built as their own things. You know, they only have to exist kind of in and of themselves. And that kind of really makes their arcade imperfection special, right? You know, they're always perfectly designed for their purpose. They don't have to be one-to-one replications of the arcade. They can't be because of the technology inside them, but they're all their own thing. And that's really what the book kind of delves into, and what we'll go through. We'll go through, you know, some of my favorites as we go. But before we got onto screens, LCD or VFD, the earliest entries in the book include Simon here, which is a bit of a classic. Who isn't familiar with this?
No, was not familiar.
No, not familiar with it. So it's a game where you kind of follow the patterns and you follow the steps. So
It works.
It'll
It
go.
works. Try
This will turn off.
Yes, try it.
Okay,
It works.
ready? No, it won't. Oh,
Oh, yeah, it works.
It's
so
really
green. Now it'll go green, blue.
green,
See, and it's so Simon Says, right?
yellow, green, blue, yellow.
And there's lots of different games you can play, different modes, different, you know, fans you can play with multiplayer. You'll see an advert soon. So Simon was a really, really big hit for MB. It was actually designed, as you'll see in the museum, by Ralph Baer, who did the Brown Box and the Magnavox Odyssey after that. So a little bit of heritage there. And Demon Driver I picked out, which is up here. It's not in the best condition.
Yeah.
So it's got a little bit of a breakage there. It's your one.
Sorry, yes.
No, but it's really cool. Like, I mean, I really like this game. I can't run it for you now, but like, so it doesn't use a screen. It uses this looping track, and you steer your car left and right, and if you crash, it flashes red. It's just a really fun, cool game that you know, doesn't need a screen to have fun with. We're going to see these things in action. These are old adverts, so they're going to be very grainy. But thankfully for you and for me, it gives my voice to break for like a minute. So let's have a look at an advert for Demon Driver for Electronic Formula One. It came out in various different names. One of them is going to be shown here.
It's a beautiful day for digital derby, ladies and gentlemen. Tommy has got to be cautious. He jams us with a second gear, not third. No. The traffic is tight with Tommy Hills in the lead. Look out, Tommy. Tommy Hills at the race. Tommy, you had a rough time out there. What happens now? Will you retire? Retire? I'm only 8 years old.
Becomes complete with lap counter and timer by Tony.
Came out in a lot of different names. And what the difference, I'm going to show you what I kind of want to. So before Demon Driver, you've had Mattel's Auto Race, which is kind of held up as the first handheld electronic game of all time, released from 1976. Again, you're following a track. It uses like a little tiny light. It's not much else to it. And Simon was inspired by another chasing game, which we've got a version of here.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same thing, but it's the same principle,
Little
where you follow the lights around, follow the sounds. So there's a lot of companies taking from other companies, copying, cloning, etc. Touch Me came out as its own game in 1978, just after Simon did. So there was a lot of that going on at the time. I mean, some instances of Simon for other things. You've got Maniac, which is just over there behind you, pause, and is on show in the museum. Copycat, which is from Tiger Games. Again, very, very similar thing. Chase the patterns, chase the lights. You know, if you couldn't afford Simon, you could get a different. And Simon itself came out in Super Simon form, and you've had Pocket Simon both in the late 70s and early 80s. But after these, we started getting games with screens, with displays. So if you look at some of the things on the table here, these old Nintendo Game & Watches started in 1980. You'll see that this is black, right? Monochromatic, right? So that's liquid crystal display. But a lot of the games featured in the book, like Super Paper, like Puck Monster here, they will ignore the noise. They will light up. So they use a vacuum fluorescent display, you can see here, to light it up in different colors. So this is actually my own Puck Monster from when I was a little boy. It's a little bit stiff as a result, but you can see how that display looks. And I'll turn it off now, so we distracting everyone going forward. But yeah, VFDs, as you can see playing here, Astro War's a very famous one in the UK, came via Grandstand. Bright and colourful colours, they're used with diodes. It's a technology from the 50s that Philips invented. You know, you'll find it on the microwave screen or the dashboard of your car and stuff, right? It's that kind of technology. A lot more demanding on batteries than the LCDs were. There's a reason why your gaming watches are LCDs, they're all running off watch batteries, whereas something like this is running off of your big chunky C panels. If you're buying this for a kid, I mean, I'm pretty sure, yeah, they're buying these for kids who've got AC adapters as well, right? So when I was little, sitting on my bedroom carpet, that was plugged into the wall and playing, annoying my dad with the, well, you heard the noise there. Imagine that coming downstairs every hour when they try and watch whatever it is. LCDs though, there was a little bit of variety out there. So Nintendo took the Game & Watch and created tabletop versions, which we'll get into in a bit, and they used coloured LCDs. They were coloured, but they didn't have a backlight. So funny enough, I mean, you think about the Game Boy didn't have a backlight. Nintendo were all about, you know, creating stuff that people could afford, right? Gunpei Yokai, I'm sort of riffing here, but he had a philosophy about using existing technology so that, you know, it was more affordable for the consumers. And they very much used that on their LCD games. You can see Donkey Kong Man, is it Donkey Kong Jr.? I'm not sure. And then Sega as well, Grandstand, Tiger Grandstand licensed some Sega stuff. You can see there that Afterburner is using that same Game & Watch style monochromatic LCD. Very basic. Afterburner actually uses some flashing lights as well to make it seem more fancy, but it's super, super basic. And what we're seeing here is how the physical factor of these games becomes such a massive part of the appeal. Like I said before, every game is built for its purpose. Every game has its own kind of unique presence. You've got things like when these games were coming through, control schemes weren't standardized. You know, you quite often have a control stick on the right or in the center. You didn't have the kind of modern arcade controls. I mean, even the D-pad didn't really come through, well, not properly quite well afterwards, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So something the book was really focused on, I suppose, as well as saying, like, you know, when the game's from and who made it, and, you know, how you score and things. It's about, like, conveying the sense of playing. So it's like, you know, that stick will move different from that stick. Everything feels its own way. So the hope is anyone who does pick up the book and buy the book and reads through it will, like, find the games they had as a kid, and that feeling of playing will be related to them as well. That's why as well all the photography is so original. So we're going to go into, I talked about clones before, excuse me, when it comes to Simon and Touch Me and things. So before I move on a slide, what was the, you know, biggest game of 1978 in the arcades?
Space Invaders. Well, no, just
Space Invaders. So Space Invaders absolutely made its mark. So it didn't just, you know, produce a load of copycats out there in, you know, home computers and stuff. There was a lot of VFD games that ultimately played very, very alike. And one of the first one of these was Gatlin and CGL's Galaxy Invader. A lot of these games have different names. So this was called Fire Away in the US. You got like a metal controller on it. The metal, what's it called? The station lever. It was called. You could select your difficulty levels. You had this strange little knobbly button to fire. It was a really, really unique feeling thing. And you can still find these quite easily on eBay and things. Like, they've lasted incredibly well, because when you hold one, it's built like a brick, you know. They're incredibly hard to destroy. Don't try delivery, of course. So, that's one of the first ones. And we'll look at some more here before we go any further. So these are all Space Invaders games. in very, very different VFP forms. So invading the space, you can see there on the top left, or top right, sorry, that was one of my favorite ones. I love the kind of weird radar effect it had. Unfortunately, what you get if you buy them today is this little lever here snaps off really, really easily. So if you are like, oh, I want to buy these things now, watch out for that. Galaxy Twin Invade is an interesting one, in so much as it's all very, very, very dark red. They've gone for like a real kind of ominous feel. And again, you've got the stick on the right-hand side. Astro Wars is was huge in the UK. I think that's probably where I grew up. The game that most people had. Felt quite standardized. It was Space Invaders, but you had a docking mission in between levels, so it gave you multiple levels, which was quite unique at the time. You know, a lot of these games very, very basic, but any game that kind of mixed it up a bit. This felt a little bit closer to the arcade experience. Space Shop, I'm going to check my notes, but yes, sold in Tandy, in the UK, Radio Shack in the States. And what that used was this kind of mirrored effect using red LEDs. So if anyone's used a Virtual Boy on Nintendo, it's a similar sort of thing. You kind of have to sort of look into it as best you can. And we looked at Galaxy Invader before. That Galaxy Invader came out with a few different models, kind of had sequels. So you're about to see another advert for Galaxy Invader 1000, also known as Cosmic 1000, Far Away. It follows the general design philosophy, I suppose, as the version beforehand. But yeah, let's have a look at how that looks mentioned.
Hey kids, they can take your favourite gun with you anyway. Galaxy Space Invaders. You hold the future in your hands, so get them before they land. Play it easy, play it hard. You choose with this skill switch. Oh, got him. Oh no, you got him again. You could be a space hero. Just play Galaxy Space Invaders and pulverize them. Galaxy Space Invaders from Future Plus. Space Age games for the Space Age kid.
Some Brits about this time, David Jones and Circuit Stores.
So moving onwards, yes, Puck Monster. So this, one of my absolute favorites. I just showed off. It was the first game I wrote about for the book. There's actually two different so there you go. So who brought in the other version of it? Was it you?
I can bring the other version.
Well, it's a tiny little thing. So this one is mine.
I'll bring yours.
Where's back?
Just do that. But just to kind of show minor differences, right? So these got released all around the world.
Mine has the power adapter.
Different,
so
yes,
it can be
yes.
different.
Yours has got the adapter.
Yeah.
I'll try my best to show it off, but you can see here it says Puck Boy,
The Puck
which I'm
Boy.
sure no one would ever have scratched anything out there. But you can see that mine says Puck Men.
Yeah, this one is for boys.
Yeah, this is for men. This is for men. And for whatever reason,
So if anyone want to check, yeah, there's slides and
you can see as well, you've got the lever here, which is called the paddle on this.
Oh,
Hard
And there's this, build them on it. What's this like that?
Just part boy.
Pac-Man.
Oh, that's hard boy.
Yeah.
They're the same.
You see, you're a puck boy or a Pac-Man.
And
And there's loads of examples of that right across the range. I'll pop it down here.
Actually, it works.
Yeah. Well, this is when I was talking in there and it turned on. I was like, oh my god.
It's our Yugoslav.
For folding history. But anyway, the reason we're showing this right now is because you saw how Space Invaders led to a load and load of Space Invaders flow games. What was the biggest game in 1980? It was Pac-Man, wasn't it? So again, same phenomenon happened. You got Pac-Man being huge in arcades, led to a whole slew of VFD games coming out, maze games, not just Pac-Man as well, you had other ones, but like you can see Munchman here, or released as Munchman by Toby in the UK. It only has one map, but this in other parts of the world was an official Pac-Man game, was licensed. Puck Monster that you see here, down here as well, there's a version of that where you'll find Namco written. So there are versions that are licensed and versions that are not, but they're the same game, all the same game. So Puck Monster, where it changed from Munchman, is the map layout changed between stages, whereas Munchman's never did.
And case is different.
And yeah,
Round
different cases. Yeah, you get like a flat,
Yeah.
a flat one. Yep. So yeah, again, like the same kind of screen, the same kind of game, all manufactured mostly in Japan, shipped overseas, imported, different cases. Munchman, Puck Monster, whatever it is, most of the time it's the same game. And like I said, Coleco, I mean, we've got a Coleco novel here. This is for Frogger.
It works.
But yeah.
It has battery.
Lovely stuff. There's Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man versions that Coleco put out. Again, officially licensed, but they're using the same displays. I've got a very different version of Frogger to that at home. I couldn't bring it with me, but it's like the big CGL one, yellow one. It's lovely stuff. But yeah, so you can see, I'll show you in a minute, but in a second. In Japan, Munchman came out as Pac-Man or as Puck Monster. So even though I don't know what they're saying, but it's going to be Japanese. Yes.
Batman.
Did everyone know that Pac-Man was Pac-Man, right? You know. And when it came west, they were like, "Yeah, we can't do that." Very sweet. But yeah, Puck Monster Sound, like I said, this is the first one I wrote for the book, and it's the one I have the most kind of personal connection with. When you play it, you'll see it incredibly similar to the arcade game, as far as any kind of BFE game can be. You've got your power pills, you've got tunnels you can go through. Again, in the UK it's sold by CC, mine says CGL here, but you might see it with Gakken written there. CGL also imported stuff like Konami, so the version of Frogger I've got at home is the CGL Konami version. I showed you a minute, so you'll notice that this Frogger's got Sega written, which is great. I love that little bit of that little wrinkle in history where Sega licensed it to the US, and that's how it ended up on that. Yeah, and Gakken also made a game called Super Puck Monster in 1980. That's the one that became an official Pac-Man game in the US. So, I mean, if you're going to start a collection, I'm going to go through some kind of VFD MVPs soon. So, if you see these things and like, where to start, Puck Monster was absolutely one of them. But if you're talking about the biggest names that I guess were doing tabletop games in the 80s, a very, very familiar one. So Nintendo, very, very famous for their Game & Watch. That's a brand that's carried through to now. But as part of that Game & Watch, there were varieties of them. So you had the single screen ones like you see here. You had your clamshell, dual screen, on the floor. You can see how this goes. You had Donkey Kong like that, you had Zelda like that. Very many of them. Or you had two-player ones that had little joypad things you could pull out. And then you had these tabletop ones. They only made 4. We're going to see one of them in action just now. There he is, it's Mario. Before it was kind of, formalized as his character then. It's Mario, but not.
Tabletop games. Sold separately. Spooky Game, Popeye Game, and Mario Cement Factory. From Nintendo.
So Nintendo didn't license those IPs to another company to make their games. They made them themselves. And they made 4 tabletop games in total. They made Popeye, Mario Cement Factory, they made Donkey Kong, and they made Snoopy. Also made, you saw over there, the clamshell style, and also the panorama screen version of these games came out. They're a little bit more fragile because they popped up, they come with the screen. It was a really, really nice design, but again, they haven't lasted all that well. Something worth noting, I kind of throw this in, it's not really tabletop related, but the multi-screen games is where you first got a D-pad. I didn't see if this had on. Sure. No, it doesn't. Just up, down, left, right. See here. But when they did the Donkey Kong one of these, they had a D-pad. First time you saw a Nintendo D-pad, like you still get on a Switch. But the Switch has got buttons, but traditional Nintendo pad today. But despite a lot of the internet telling you that that's 1982, that's where it first came from, credit to Tiger for deluxe football for having a D-pad in 1979. So if you do find this anywhere, as far as I know, I think that's the first proper use of a D-pad. Obviously, Tiger's a company that put out a lot of games. In the 80s, I guess it became a bit cheap, like all cheap handhelds, but as you saw earlier on, they did Copycat and did a lot of sports games in America. Just to show you, here's the range of Nintendo tabletops. Snoopy, Donkey Kong Jr., Mario Cement Factory, and Popeye. And that Popeye game is actually quite unique. Anyone here who knows the history of Nintendo and Popeye will know that that's where Donkey Kong came from. That was meant to be a Popeye game, and they couldn't get the license. They wanted to make a Popeye game, but for whatever reason they couldn't. And that's why you end up with Donkey Kong and Mario with the princess, and off you go. But they did make some in the end, and the tabletop one is completely unique. It's actually a one-on-one fighting game where you play as Popeye, excuse me, and you've got a knock Bluto off the end of the pier. You can set your difficulty levels, like if you put it on hard, a swordfish can come up from underneath you and like spear you and knock you back, and ultimately you've got to save olive oil. So again, not only is this a game that is, you know, just a really nice thing to see on the shelf, those Nintendo Game & Watch tabletops are beautiful things, it's completely unique. It's a completely unique Nintendo game that doesn't exist anywhere else. Just like the little ones though, all the tabletops have alarm and clocks. I don't necessarily know why you would, because they're not backlit, you can't see them in the dark, and they only run on batteries, so they're going to run out really soon. But it's an option, and options are nice. And I guess kind of ringing the bell for like, it's the end of us doing these things. I mean, Game & Watch continued because of the low price point, but these more expensive models, they were phased out in 83. That's when the Famicom got released in Japan. So you can see Nintendo's business model moving away from these kind of one-off games, these individual things, to the Famicom, which became the NES. And therefore, the world is changed as a result. We'll closely about the next, just so we can transition into Nintendo's major rival, the 80s, which of course is Sega. So Sega did a range of tabletop games and LCD games, handheld games, mostly licensed them out to other manufacturers. So Pengo's in the book. It's actually a very, very good version made by Bandai. You slide the blocks just like the arcade game and trap your enemies. And it's a pretty good version. Zaxxon, really, really good version. This with the actual isometric perspective. They use two of the VFDs, so two fluorescent displays in there to create the kind of effect of height as you fly up and down. So really, really unique game amongst tabletops there. You had things like Afterburner and Outrun that got kind of big things. So you saw the Afterburner there with a big joystick. You could get Outrun with steering wheel, but they were still just little LCD screens. So you could also get them as handheld versions. We don't have any here. Imagine that, but sideways. They're about that big. And they were hugely, hugely popular. So much so that Hasbro, who now owns the rights to those games, re-released some sort of about 3 or 4 years ago, I think. So you could get those Tiger handhelds again. They did one of them as Transformers, those Generation 2 Transformers, so they look good. And Coleco in the US licensed Sega games and Nintendo games for that matter, and they advertised all of their games on TV with a character called Mr. Arcade. It's very American, slightly obnoxious. They do one, I want to say it's Donkey Kong, where someone's playing in the arcade and he's getting so angry he becomes like the ape. There's another one where someone's wife can't get him home from the arcade, so Mr. Arcade shows up and gives him like a little tiny tabletop version of whatever game it is, so they can save their marriage. And then Zaxxon is just about, helping
Excuse if you're inside. You're bringing the space, aren't you? I'm bringing to Zaxxon. Flying lonely baby, just also you're good. Take 5 Zaxxon home. You got it. It's the Imperfection version of Sega.
Really
That is not the same.
And best of all, you can take sex on all the way home.
And now Mr. Arcade tricks prices with a $10 rebate on all
Some
Coleco
sort of
tabletop
very
games.
blurry, but Frogger, again, a Coleco game. It's the same style. In terms of other companies who are putting out some familiar names in Tabletop 4, you got Konami, they did Jungler, and Amadar, Frogger as well, again, behind me in a various selection of formats. These little pop-up ones are pretty cool. They did 4 of those in total, did three or I want to say 4. A bit like the Nintendo ones, they haven't all lasted, but if you can find them, good work. The idea obviously being to keep the screen free of scratches and free of dust, but ultimately the mechanisms tend to fail. Another company that wasn't so well known in the UK, but I know there is an example downstairs, is Bambino. So when I was researching this book, I wasn't that familiar with Bambino, but they mostly made sports games. Certainly ones featured in the books of sports games. They were based in Los Angeles, didn't last that long. They're really fond of these sort of really over-the-top statements about their game. So the basketball game you see there, they advertise as having, quote, unlimited computerized plays. Unlimited. You know, you'll never ever get bored. And their boxing game is advertised as, quote, an electronic miracle. So they were quite fond of themselves. I think it's Space Laser that's downstairs, which is, again, a kind of a Space Invaders vibe one. But they also put out Safari, which is, incredibly un-PC for these days. Lovely shade of green. I don't know if anyone ever had a bathroom suite in that colour, but it does give kind of 70s bathroom suite. But Safari was about trapping animals, you know, literally just like trapping different animals, lions and giraffes and stuff. So that wouldn't really fly today as a kid's game. You can see the cage control buttons there. Not a D-pad, it's all individual buttons. Very, very strange era in gaming. Moving on though, a company that was huge in the UK, and a lot of these games bear that if they don't have Tony on them, they have Grandstand on them. So Firefox F7 is one that I had. It had stereo sound. It was just a really cool. It was not based on the Firefox film at all, even though it came out around the same time. So there's no Clint Eastwood in it or anything like that. But an amazing game. And yeah, Grandstand in the UK, they were just everywhere. So you had Astro Wars, Caveman, Firefox F7, Tron was the Grandstand game, Munchman, if you've already seen. And many of them were obviously brought in over from Japan, given different names. You can see originally Caveman and Tron were made by Tomy in Japan, whereas other ones were imported, originally made by Epoch. And they have different names. So Star Force and Invader from Space and Astro Wars were all from Epoch, who is a name you might recognize because they also made a console called the Cassette Vision and the Super Cassette Vision. So they were active in the console space in Japan as well. They also made a very primitive pre-Game Boy handheld called the Game Pocket Computer. Didn't take off in any way, but again, a precursor to the Game Boy. So they were active in space. Grandstand also made some of these wonderful kind of Pong clones, of which some are downstairs, very, very similar. It licensed the Channel F, the Fairchild Channel F, which is kind of famously known as the first console to use ROM cartridges. They sold that in the UK as the video entertainment computer. And they were also active in New Zealand, where they sold the Sega SG-1000, where it was branded as the Grandstand Sega 1000. Couldn't stop putting their name in. Just a huge presence. It's very, very hard where I grew up to find any, to not find these games. You go to any retro fair, you got to find Grandstand. And Astro Wars in particular, as I mentioned earlier, its original name in Japan kind of gives away some of what its gameplay is. It is Space Invaders, but it takes from Galaxia as well. Let me say you get a bonus level where you have to dock your ship with a landing platform for bonus points. It's really, really hard. I was always terrible at it. But the enemies, they don't move in rows like Space Invaders. They come in like zigzag patterns. So Space Invaders, but it was Galaxian as well. And, it's popular enough that these days you can find it on the App Store or on iOS. You can play an emulated version of it. And just to kind of give you an idea of the price of these things. So Astro Wars was $27.99 in the UK. So that's today's money, that's 114 euros.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty normal price. These were mostly around the £20 mark. So, they look cheap and cheerful, but they were, a lot of money at the time. More than a game for your Sega or for your NES, but a big investment. So Astro Wars, again, we're going to have a quick look at I'm pretty sure it's Australian. For some reason, there's a lot of Australian information on the internet. Well, have a look at how the blades for footballing.
Deflect the shields activated. Lasers reaching full power. Ready to engage in.
Nine.
Yes, sir.
Increase. Routine.
Astro Wars with the arcade and good store stuff. You'll have to be quick. Right, so there's nothing for
Yeah, you can see there they're showing the LCD games as well. So quite often a game that came out with VFD, there'd be like a smaller pop inside the LCD version. I said before about getting into some VFD MPPs. So these are kind of the games in the book that are special for some reason. We touched upon what I think are some of the best ones so far, but just to kind of go into a few more before we get to the end of things. Tron, we picked upon, but what's really, really interesting about Tron is it has 3 distinct games. So it tries to get as close to the arcade as possible. You have light cycles, you have your disc game, and then you have a showdown against the Master Control program, where you have to throw your projectile, break through a shield, get it just right. And then a lot of these games do, when you get to the end, it repeats. So basically the game will keep going, getting harder and harder and harder. And most of the time, the end of the game is just achieving the score. It's not like you get a fanfare or something. Little wrinkle in the copyright. It looks like this came out before the movie did. It says 1981 on it, but it did come out in the year of the movie. It has the fun stuff, and it's this smoky grey plastic, so you can kind of see through it. And it's got a fake circuit board in there, which I quite like. So they've actually got it inside the casing, to make you think you can see inside the machine, but it's just a piece of cardboard. But it's a nice touchstone nonetheless. Stargate is a wonderful one made by MTech. I just love the look and feel of this one. Really tricky to control because it uses the same kind of controls that Defender did in terms of going back and plays hard. Applying modern kind of sensibilities to it takes a while. But what was good about this one is it had a stereo headphone socket, so you could actually stop all those annoying bleeps from annoying your parents. And it kind of, I was going to say ported, it wasn't ported, a version of Stargate also came out for MTech's Adventure Vision console. So it was only one of, I think, 4 games that came out for that console. So that's rare. This is rare. It's one of the rarest ones in the book. And just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Most of these are picked because they just look good on a shelf, but they're also really, really nice quality as well. Star Force is ostensibly a sequel to Astro Wars. I think it's really cool. It has this banking effect as you play, so your ship appears to move more. It's not just a flat plane. When your ship blows up, it has all these fiery effects. The enemies attack around the side of you as well. It has a really weird joystick, which there's no need for it. It's just completely over the top and does nothing for the game. It's a hindrance, if anything. But again, like I was saying, these are all designed to be their own things. It's not just here's a case, we're going to mass manufacture this. They're made to to kind of suit the games as much as possible. Alien Chase is a very cool one from Tomy. A lot of these games have 2-player modes, but you'd have to pass it back and forth. The way that this one gets around that is by having the vacuum fluorescent display in the middle of the unit with openings on both sides. So you can play 2 players simultaneously, one at the top of the screen, one at the bottom, collecting your aliens, taking them back to your ship. Where it says the music will sound familiar, it basically uses music from Star Wars. You know, again, copyright, a little bit of Wild West at the time. You know, you turn around and go, wait a minute, that's John Williams, and it is John Williams that's playing. So again, just a really fun, interesting game, Alien Chase. That's actually that is my copy of it, my unit of it, whatever you want to say, which sadly couldn't come here, but it's packed away, all nice with life. And then Knockabout Boxing, I like for all the wrong reasons, really. Boxing's a pretty simple game, you know, you punch the other guy till he falls over. But this is ridiculously complicated. And it makes promises like it's true to life, has total control. You have to like pick where your boxer stands using these strange array of buttons on either side. Again, it's a simultaneous 2-player game on one screen. And you have to be very, very familiar with your player too, because you're basically going to be shoulder to shoulder to play it. But yeah, you've got to adopt certain stances before you can attack. You've got to defend. So just really fun and strategic. And then basketball games similar, where you can only take shots if you're in certain positions. So not a button basher at all. Like if you tried to play it today, you've got to be quite methodical. You've got to be very deliberate. So yeah, just some really interesting, novel, unique, original VGHM games. Moving on to another small section of the book, section. There's a couple of entries for pinball tables. These are interesting to me. These are very, very immediate feeling, obviously. Tomy's Atomic Pinball, you can see here, is one of the entries. And it's pretty good. Atomic Pinball was only battery powered. It had a few different releases. It was released as late as 1987 with Starcom branding. I don't know how far Starcom reached. It was a toy line. There's some of it in the UK. It was like this magnetic thing. But yeah, it got a Starcom makeover. Light flashes, bell rings. I mean, it was pretty good, but it wasn't as good as Pinball Wizard. And again, this is one that I've got. That's my actual machine there. This is one you could actually plug into the wall, and you had to make it work. You could save your score on the top. Just a really, really great version of pinball. This is actually one that my kids still bother me to get out. They love playing it. It's really, really noisy, but the lights spin in the middle. All the bumpers light up. You've got the third flipper at the top right there. Really, really cool. Received some different versions over the years. You can see there, it was released as Astro Shooter. It had a Price of Right makeover. There was a Pirate one. And then there's a really rare and hard to find one that Coca-Cola released as late as 1996. An heirloom Coca-Cola collectible, apparently. It's all the same game, same layout, same bumpers, same everything, just given a different sort of dressing. So that game did pretty well for itself, and my version is still running great supply. Right. I hope everyone's been paying attention, because I am going to do a little test now before we wrap up. It's a screen test. Very, very simple. Just tell me the games based on the screens, and they have all been in this presentation, but they might not have all been close up. So it depends on how well you've been listening. So go, give us that one.
Frozen.
Yeah, that's cheating. Right behind me.
Oh, cement versus cement. Cement versus
With all screens.
So that's what happens if you shine all the light through it, but it's not turned on. I didn't actually mention, it is invaded from space, but you can see how the invaders are different colours. You score different points depending on where they are in the coloration. This is a good one, but again, hope you're paying attention.
Tron.
Yeah, that's the life cycle stage of Tron. So you can see how that works. Very cool. And then this last one might catch you out. Well, maybe not. I did mention its coloration.
Cool. Galaxies.
So what I didn't really get into when I was talking about this one is how when the aliens come down, you'll see they're in two parts. So they're not invaders, they're twin vaders. You see? So yeah, Frogger, this is my version of Frogger from Home, Mario's Cement Factory, Ready for Space, Tron, and Galaxy Twin Invader. So these type of games, these electronic tabletop games, you don't really get them anymore at all. They kind of disappeared. There were some consoles that were, you know, of the same style. You had the Adventure Vision, and then downstairs you've got the Vectrex. You do get modern emulation style products, like the Sabre Bristol Astro City Mini. You can get a Taito Red 2 Mini. There's a Neo Geo Mini as well. These are all kind of like tabletop, desktop games full of preloaded stuff. And in the last year or so, you've got the Evercade line. They do a bar top thing. So they're all kind of following that lineage, I suppose. And so finally, you can actually get Arcade Perfect. So this is my spare room at home where I've just got these set up, and you can see Miss Pac. Little Miss, all of mine are small, so Miss Pac-Man as well. But they've actually finally now got Arcade Perfect tabletop games. And that's it. Thanks for listening. So this is me. You can follow me over on Blue Sky. I have other books that you can buy. This year, I'm releasing a book about aliens games. If anyone wants to speak to me about aliens games, I'd love to. Yeah, White Owl is the publisher. And yeah, Coin Ups and Tabletops is out now. It'll be available from the museum and where you can find it online. And I hope everyone didn't mind listening to me blather on about tabletop electronic games. Thank you very much for being here.